Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It depends on where you are. And this is not Truman Show. I'm delighted to be here to give the word to our guests in this first session of the SRN Conversations. Our aim with this project is to create a living memory of our network and to celebrate the path that we have walked together in the adventure of putting in contact researchers, academics, and practitioners of all over the world around the topic of screenwriting. We will begin this series of conversations with the presence of the first organizers of our annual conference. I would say our mythical annual conference. Ian Macdonald, Kirsi Rinne, Eva Redvall, and Ronald Geertz. Thank you for being here, for joining us. And each of you, I want to ask you to introduce yourselves. But I just want to share with you before my personal memories about my first encounter with SRN. It was in Denmark, in Copenhagen, at the conference that organized Eva. And I came from Chile. At that moment, I am living in Chile. And I remember that at the beginning, I thought that I was the only person that was researching on screenwriting, or that I couldn't get in touch with the other people, you know. And when I came to that room, my first shock was to see so many people there. And then I wanted to meet Ian, because I did my homework at the Google thing, and I wanted to meet Ian. And I introduced myself. I said, I'm Carmen, Sofia, and he said, you come from Chile. And I was astonished, because I knew him by the web, but he didn't. I thought that he didn't know me. And he did. So I thought that was my second shock. This is a very personal conference. And then at that moment, I felt in my place. I felt in a very welcoming place. And then I saw a very young Eva. She's young today, but was very young then, sitting on the table eating an apple, because there was some kind of fruits for the participants. And I said, wow, this is the conference I want to be. And then Ronald and the three Belgians, as I said, they were these three guys during the breaks. They were so happy and so joyful, speaking a language that I didn't understood. And then some years later, I went to Finland to meet Kirsi. And all that began with an encounter with SRN conference. And I think that this lovely place is a great place to be as a practitioner or as an academic, a researcher. So, but now we have here the four first organizers of our conference, and I just want to give them the word and to say thank you for being here and for sharing your precious memories.
Right, is it my go? Good.
Yep.
Where are you? Right, Carmen, thank you so much for a wonderful introduction, and I think you summed it up really well. It's really good to see my colleagues here. It's been ages since we said hello, and it's really nice to see you. Okay, yeah, I'll have a go at introducing the first conference. If I freeze or if there's any technical problems, I'm sure people will let me know. Okay, so the first one was held in Leeds in 2008, but there's a bit of a history before that. the way it came about was that I had done some research into screenwriting and discovered, as Carmen did, that I was very isolated as a screenwriting research scholar. There were people around, but they were very, very few and quite separated from each other. So when I began at the University of Leeds, which I'd moved from my previous university, the first thing I did was to set up a workshop, a group of people who are interested in the research possibilities for looking at screenwriting and the screenplay. So what happened then was that we had a meeting in 2006. Michael Eaton, who's a screenwriter, Eric Knussen, who you may know of, who's a filmmaker and academic, Graham Roberts, Richard Willey, and David Cooper. And we sat down and just said, okay, what is it we're trying to work out for the screen projects to help us look at this kind of thing? And we started actually with the one which involved asking a range of questions of professionals and academics and people who read scripts for a living, to say, okay, what if we were to reinvent the screenplay, make it more appropriate for current use? What would we do? What would be included? What would we downplay? What is missing in the current screenplay, etc. Now, back then, of course, this was before all the software had developed. It was some software that had on the original formatting. And we decided that we could use this question, this research question, to try and understand a bit more about the whole process, about what the product was, and what kind of further research possibilities there were in this. Over the next 2 years, we expanded our research group to include Chasita Popat, who was at Leeds, Willem Kaptein, who was from Holland, he was a music scholar and had written about screenwriting and music. I then talked to Paul Wells, who came on board in 2007, J.J. Murphy in 2007, and then through him I was contacted by Catherine Millard. So gradually we were getting people together to start to talk to each other, and of course we were using email to do that because that's really the only way we could do it back then. Then sort of in late 2007 I was contacted by Kirsi from what was then called Tyke. Tyke has a different meaning in Yorkshire, but I won't tell you what it is. Now called Aalto University in Helsinki. They were already working with 5 or 6 students doing PhDs on screenwriting research. And Kirsi reached out to me, and then we met up and discussed the possibilities. We decided, Kirsi, really just as a sort of pilot, I guess. That was probably the intention. A one-day event, but in the event, it actually became something like a 2-day event stretched over 3 days, mainly because of the distance that some of the participants had come. And we did have keynote speakers was J.J. Murphy and Paul Wells, but Catherine Millard also joined us, and we had screenwriter and academic Adam Gantz from Royal Holloway. We had Sue Clayton, writer-director. We had Eva Novrup Redvall, who came from Copenhagen, Bridget Connor, who was doing her PhD at Goldsmiths, Stuart Mackay and Ted Nanicelli, and 2 research students from Helsinki, Rika Pello and Kai Tuikaniemi. there actually were 47 registered attendees which we had 4 from Helsinki, who included Marja-Riitta Koivumäki, and then others who came but didn't present were people like Ros Davis, Phil Matthews from Bournemouth, and Claudia Sternberg, who'd written a really good book on the screenplay in 1997. We even got literary agent Julian Friedman along, because he usually comes to things like that. Okay. The conference itself was, again, it was just a bit of a revelation, I have to say, because we had quite a lot of different topics, all of which I think have developed over the years into rather more grand things. Here's the information for participants. You can't see. This is all we got, really. Nothing fancy. We didn't bother kind of producing. Well, we had a folder for it, but I've lost that. But this is the information of what people actually spoke about. Sue Clayton, filmmaker, was talking about mythic sources and structures in screenwriting, using her feature film, The Disappearance of Finbar, and more exclusively the process of writing for her film Jumalari, set in Bhutan and written with both Western and Bhutanese collaborators. Very interesting paper about cultural specificity. Bridget Connor, she's published her book since the conference, obviously, and she was talking about screenwriting as a marginal form of creative labor, working under Angela McRobbie at Goldsmiths. Really interesting and typically tight and useful information about the labor market. Adam Gantz's paper was unfortunately marred by the fact that I think he just bought an Apple Mac and didn't know how to work it. So my memory is mostly of Adam tearing his hair out, almost literally, trying to get this thing to work. And our best technician was helping him and couldn't get it to work, so it was never going to work. And yet, what he had to say was really interesting. It was about thinking of the screenplay as a self-teaching system. And there's a quote somewhere. It teaches us how to watch it as we watch it. That's the film. A successful film is an example of a self-teaching system. So it's just it's about information design. It's about what strategies are used to tackle the task of imparting information while simultaneously unfolding a narrative. So there was a gem in the middle of all of that kerfuffle going on. Kai Kui Kanyemi, if I've said that anywhere near correctly, it would be a miracle, was talking about writing for the digital screen, quite an exploratory piece, looking at digital projectors, and the fact is that the difference in the audience experience has an impact on what it is that the screenplay is actually doing and what kind of screenplay you might be discussing on that. Stuart Mackay from Royal Holloway talked about Screenplay Analytics, which is actually over the years becoming more and more important in terms of algorithms. But he was talking about the whole range of possibilities from a digital perspective, including previs and so on. By that time, there were just 1 or 2 previs software programs that were being developed. But of course, as I said earlier, they were being developed around the current requirements rather than looking at them from a new perspective. Catherine Millard, in similar fashion in a way, before she came up with her wonderful book, Screenwriting in the Digital Era, she talked about after the typewriter and the relationship between images and words, and how the screenplay could break free of the rules and constraints that were put in place in the age of the typewriter. JJ, of course, came up with No Room for the Fun Stuff, which is the title of his book that he published. American indie cinema and how it kind of chips away at the conventional way of doing things. And he's continuing to do that with his latest book. Here's the plug. Good old JJ. He'll always have a place there. Ted Nannicelli tried to prove that the screenplay was actually an artwork in its own right, but he was getting tripped up, really, I suppose, by asking the question if they are either an artwork or a non-detachable constituent part of film. What he didn't say was what would happen once he got the answer. If it is an artwork, in my view, so what? Good, great, let's move on. But it was actually, nevertheless, typical Nannicelli. It was thought-provoking. The gem was in the way that he expounded what he was trying to find out, I think. Rick Capello talked about Tonino Guerra, and actually the relationship between director and writer, the relationship there in film, what lies in that relationship, and particularly in the history of European screenwriting. Guerra had worked with Antonioni, Fellini, Rossi, Tapiani during his 60-year-long career, so it was rich material. Eva, you can talk about what you talked about, but in fact, at that particular paper, you were, I think, talking about a shared language. That was the phrase that I wrote it down. I've got all my notes here, but I'm not going to read them all out because it's too long. But a shared language between the professions, and the change that went on at the Danish Film School between the kind of auteurist approach and really the idea that the screenwriter has more to contribute than that, I suppose, and that they really need to be speaking to each other. Paul Wells ended the conference with an outline of the particular condition of the animated screenplay. Mainly screenplay he talked about in inverted commas, really, because animation is different. It always seems to be different. Peculiar language of animation, he talked about binaries, beats, and bricolage, by which he meant the associative, symbolic, and metaphoric aspects emerging in narratological models, which was a lot to take in at the end of a conference. But actually, with Paul, you can take anything. It was really good, really useful. Really helpful in reminding us that animation is, of course, the director's medium par excellence. You can control everything. It's not just CGI. So that was really an outline of what we looked at during the conference itself. I would say just finally one word about the SRN. The Screenwriting Research Network came about from all the work that was done by people during that period, during the mid-2000s. What happened kind of almost accidentally was that immediately after the conference, we set up a Giscmail, which in the UK is a special service that is available to universities and educators, basically as an email list that you can contact other people with quickly and share information. And that was fundamental to the development of the Screenwriting Research Network. I set it up a few days after the conference. The first person to post was Craig Batty, and he, advertising his latest book. It's true, he was the first person to post, but then a few days later we started getting people signing up in droves, and we've now ended up, I think, with over 600 members of that particular list. So who knew that we were going to end up being quite that big? This really was, and always has been, a joint effort from everybody who's been involved. And what is amazing is that the people who came in right at the beginning are still there, as are quite a lot. I'll just end by saying that when the last conference I went to in 2018 in Milan, there were 122 people registered to give papers, of which exactly 50% were serial returnees. So that tells you something. People seem to like it. Next.
Is it me then? Because although Carmen said that she met Eva first, I'm pretty sure that Carmen went first to Helsinki.
Now it's your turn, Kirsi.
Yes, yes. Okay, my name is Kirsi Rinne and I worked at the Aalto University, former University of Art and Design, in starting there at the beginning of 2000. And I happened to be sitting in the same office as Riikka Pelo and some other PhD students of screenwriting, and we chatted during the coffee breaks and were thinking that is there somewhere else in the world people who are researching screenwriting? Because you have to remember that our department of film, television and scenography was located, it was a real, it was not like a academic community, but it was a film school. And at the University of Art and Design, the doctoral studies and research was started at the beginning of 1990s. So there were not so many research going on. And then we Googled and actually found Ian Macdonald and invited him to Helsinki. And then it just started rolling. After Leeds, visit to Leeds, we decided that, okay, let's start the yearly conferences, and the obvious place for the next conference was Helsinki. I was a bit worried that Helsinki is it's far from the Central Europe and far from everywhere and expensive and so on and so on. But we ended up having, I took a look at my old papers, 120 participants at least, 35 foreigners or from outside Finland, and 40 proposal, I think we rejected maybe 8 or something like that. And that was taking place in September 10 to 12, 2009. And the main organizer was our department with the help of the media center Lume, where we had quite good premises for conference organization. And I remember, sorry, I was asked to tell you how many keynotes we had. We had 3 keynotes. Ian Macdonald and Torben Grådal from Denmark, who happened to be in Finland at that time, teaching at the University of Helsinki, and then David Howard. Ian, do you remember your title for the keynote lecture in Helsinki?
Not offhand, no.
No.
Are you going to tell me?
I tell you, and you can explain what the first sentence means. Thin air and solid ground, rethinking screenwriting research. Thin air, what is thin air in there? But we can talk about this later if you like. But it was a good one. I remember that conference very well because that was basically 1 week after my 15th birthday. And I was 2 weeks before the conference. I was in New York with my family for a birthday travel. But I had in Helsinki, I had 2 assistants. One was a production student and the other was her friend whom I didn't know, but they were so fantastic. They made everything ready. When I returned, it was maybe like a 4th or like 5 days before the conference. And they were absolutely fantastic. Without Mahsa and Hami, I would never have succeeded this. Yeah, it was my 15th. Yeah. But you know, the filter is working really well. So I will post the instructions how you change the filter. Anyway, nowadays, it's so strange that Hami Ramezan's first film was screened in Berlin Film Festival 2 weeks ago. So he's a famous international filmmaker nowadays, and Mahsa is maybe the best. Well, she won the best producer's prize in the Finnish Oscars last year. So these top-notch people are really our hope also in filmmaking in Finland today. What else? As I said, I'm not going through the program. It's great that you did, Ian, because I was not able. I was so nervous that I couldn't follow the presentations as much as I hoped I could, and I probably wouldn't remember without taking a look at the abstract book, anyways. But I think it went fine because we had the technical help at the Media Center Lume, and the weather was fine, which is exceptional in Finland because there is never ever a good weather. So, for example, today it's horrible. And what else can I say? It was. We were just amazed that there was so much interest in the conference, and we felt that something really remarkable was happening as it was, because this has been going on now for 20 years. Oh, yes, I went through my files and I found one image. Do you remember, Ian, that we had the first journal of screenwriting published during the Helsinki conference? Yeah. I found 2 images of that, and I will send them to maybe to you guys.
You mean of standing around drinking, saying we've...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
These are they are not very good images, but at least we have them. And I have one image from the conference dinner, and that's all, because the one mistake in these conferences, which I at least made, is not to hire a photographer to get the like a, you know, I don't know how much time you have reserved for my presentation, but that is basically it. And we also have to remember that it was different with internet at that time. It was not so self-evident that you find everything when you just tap something, some question on some machine, and then you get the answers. And it was a lucky happening when we found your research in Leeds. And
I'll just tell you what thin air means. Thin air and solid ground. It was about looking at the ephemeral nature of screenwriting and the screenplay, because every time you think you're on solid ground and make a grab for some idea or some concept, you've got nothing but thin air.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And I can easily stop here, and we can move on with, was it now Eva's turn then? Yes, thank you.
Yes. Organizer of the third conference, and I'm Eva Novrup Redvall, and I'm associate professor at the University of Copenhagen and head of the section for film studies and creative media industries, as we're called. It's so great to hear about the first conferences and bringing back those memories, because I can only mirror Carmen by saying that I started a PhD in 2007, focusing on screenwriting collaborations between screenwriters and directors in Danish filmmaking, and I felt so lonely And I was sitting in my office saying, is no one else researching this? And where is all the academic literature on this? There's all these how books and manuals, but where is the scholarly literature that I would really like to read about this? And suddenly there was this email about a conference, a one-day conference in Leeds, or at least a conference. And I sent an email to Ian saying, I'm a PhD student in Copenhagen. I don't know anyone. Can I come to this conference? And you were so welcoming. And that has been the experience all the way through working all these years with the Screenwriting Research Network. That's sort of sense of helping young scholars and inviting everyone to contribute, and also these very constructive meetings between academics and practitioners that I think are really valuable at these conferences as well. So, I mean, I had such a great experience in Leeds and such a great experience in Helsinki that somehow I put up my hand and said, I can organize the conference in Copenhagen. And I had no idea where to get the financing or how to do it. But as it turned out that there was a grant for young female scholars, and I managed to get one. And it was intended for internationalization and improving your network. And I took all this money and put it into the conference, and we managed to put together this event where we had 67 participants in September 2010, and it ended up as a 3-day event with 2 tracks. So I haven't heard everything, but so it was quite a big event, and I was really nervous about it. I organized this together with a good colleague, Mette Mortensen in Copenhagen, and we had a student assistant, and that was it. So we organized everything. So when Carmen says she saw me sitting on a table eating an apple, I'm relaxed, and I'm going, that's not how I remember organizing this, but it was, I really remember a great conference. And also, I mean, people flying in from Chile and United States and Australia and all these places to take part. So the theme of this conference was history, theory, and practice, and we had completely stolen that from the book by Stephen Moraz, which was out, a defining book, and we also invited him to give the first keynote, which was excellent. And then we had Janet Steiger doing a keynote on considering the script as blueprint in 2010. And then Jill Nelms talking about analyzing the screenplay. I don't remember if the books was out by then or if it came after, but also, I mean, 3 really excellent keynotes. And I remember when Janet Steiger was coming, she was sending an email when she had gone to Copenhagen. It's like, I was reading on the plane about what to do in Copenhagen, and it turns out that the restaurant you have chosen as the conference dinner place is the place they recommend going if you only have 1 day in Copenhagen. Can you believe this was the only place that was big enough to host everyone? Where we were like, okay, Janet is happy, and this is going to go well. And I must say, there were so many wonderful presentations. And as you say, Kirsi, you were running around organizing. I won't even try to go through all of the papers. But for instance, we had a panel on the ontology of the screenplay with a presentation by you, Ian. More simple than the previous one, because you were now down only to the poetics of screenwriting. Clear cut and to the point. And I remember that as a very inspiring talk. Followed by Howard A. Rudman, who was there that year giving a talk about what a screenplay isn't, which was also very interesting. And then followed by J.J. Murphy, who was talking about less is more in praise of the underwritten screenplay. And it shows sort of the scope and the many different kinds of presentations. Also, I think that's been one of the wonderful things about the Screenwriting Research Conferences over the years. All these people coming from so many different countries, bringing so many different traditions and perspectives to the table, because there is a tendency, of course, to focus on American filmmaking, and there are so many different ways of approaching screenwriting and filmmaking in the world, and that's definitely been a meeting point, the Screenwriting Research Network. And I mean, I can mention all these people that I'm still in contact with, going back from these conferences, like Adam Gans, Catherine, Miranda Banks was at the Copenhagen conference, Line Langebæk, the screenwriter in the UK now, Dane as well. Ronald, you were there, Kirsi, Ian, Diego Connell in Ireland, Paul Wells, Jules Selbo, Stephen Price, Carmen, of course, Rosamund Davis, so many people that are still in this network and still working together in different ways. And of course, that's also because of the journal that emerged from this, and also the Palgrave Studies in Screenwriting book series. So I think these conferences have been so important in terms of people meeting each other and having that sense of community, and then putting screenwriting research firmly on a research agenda in so many different ways. And Ian, I must say, I mean, you have been so important for me in my career in terms of inviting me to this conference, but also in terms of after the conference in Copenhagen, for instance, taking the time to write a letter to my head of department and to even the dean, saying, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but you have this young scholar who just organized a wonderful conference, and it's really a nice thing when people do that. And I'm taking that and I'm trying to carry that with me and do that with younger scholars, and remembering to sort of help younger scholars establish themselves and give credit. So that meant a lot. And then of course encouraging me to write a monograph in English, which was, no, I can't write a book in English. And you're like, yeah, of course you can.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, and it's fantastic.
You're very nice. It's been fantastic to see it travel the world following that. But I would probably never have thought that I could write a book in English and that there would be an interest in this if you hadn't been so insisting and saying, no, I think there's an interest and there's an audience. And I think
Top seller, I seem to think. The top seller in the series.
Isn't that nice? Who would have thought on Danish film and screenwriting? So I think this network has had so much importance to me, and I think it has for a number of people. And it's so nice now that we have a board that are trying to also write the history of this and carrying it on. And I really hope we can have a conference this year. It was so sad.
Yeah, let's do that.
One last year. It's nice to see you on Zoom, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
I think I will hand it over because I can give my praise to this network forever. But hand it over to you, Ronald.
Okay, so I will continue the praise. So let me first introduce myself. I'm Ronald Geertz, and I work at Vrije Universiteit Brussel, Université Libre de Bruxelles, two different universities, Dutch speaking and French speaking. And I also was one of those lonely researchers thinking that I was the only one trying to do script or screenwriting research, and then I don't remember how I found out about the Helsinki conference, because I came in at the Helsinki conference, and I don't remember how I found out, but anyway, there I was, and actually it's at the Helsinki conference that the Brussels conference already started, so more or less in Helsinki, because I received a message from a man who said that he saw that we were both presenting at the Helsinki conference, and so we met, and then the idea grew, well, let's bring the screenwriting research network to Brussels. And of course, that man was Hugo Verkouteren. Some know him very well. Our ambition was first to do it the next year after the Helsinki conference, but I couldn't guarantee funding at that time. And now I hear that Eva, I thought Eva could, or already had funding. Well, we didn't, so the Brussels conference was scheduled the year after. That is 2011. So I had almost 2 years to organize the conference. We decided to make it, let's say, a truly Belgian conference. We wanted to do it at least bilingual. So the theme of the conference was, and now I had to look it up, Beyond Boundaries, Screenwriting Across Media. Au-delà des frontières, l'écriture du scénario à travers les médias. So already in the title, we wanted to be bilingual. And also we had sessions in English and and French. And that didn't work, didn't work out as well as we planned it. For instance, there was a Dutch delegate who came to me, and she was very angry, explaining me, that woman in there, she's speaking French and I don't understand. Well, that was the idea, to do it bilingual, but that didn't work for everybody. But it reflected, I think, the network's intention from the beginning to go beyond this traditional Anglo-Saxon dominance when screenwriting and screenwriting research is concerned. Those boundaries were also crossed in sessions on comics, for instance, sessions on writing for games, interactive storytelling or writing for interactive films, genetic criticism. I'm very happy that Chris Pallant wrote such a nice review or report on the conference, so I could look it up and see what was it all about. What did we do exactly? Because at that time I was just trying to get everything organized and get people where they had to be, and try to find more sandwiches, because there was a misunderstanding with the caterer, and it was Saturday, so the restaurant at the university on campus was closed. So we had to find students and assistants to go into town to buy more sandwiches for the people attending the conference. The keynotes, we had, as they say in French, we had une belle brochette, a nice skewer of keynote speakers. There was David Bordwell, who wasn't, well, he wasn't hard to convince to come to Brussels, because he has a special relationship with Brussels. The Film Archive is one of his many second homes in the world. And I think that without being officially recognized as such, that David was an important keynote, because he laid some important milestones and has written a number of essential things in on the analysis of filmic narrative in general, not just script writing. So we were very happy that he was there. We had also Jean-Claude Carrier, the screenwriter who passed away only a couple of weeks ago. When he came to Brussels, he was just a week away from turning 80 years old. So although 80 years, almost 80 years old, he really delivered. He gave a very interesting keynote talk. And after that, I remember that after that keynote talk, quite a number of articles on screenwriting started quoting Jean-Claude Carrier, especially that one of his favorite metaphors describing the screenwriting process as that metamorphosis of the chrysalis into a butterfly. So for historiographers of the Screenwriting Research Network, if you wonder why around 2011, 2012, that metaphor appears in quite a number of articles, academic articles on screenwriting, well, that's Jean-Claude Carrier. Later that evening, he also gave a Q&A on his career and as a screenwriter, and also on his thoughts on screenwriting, and that as well was well, quite a success. It was open to the public, by the way. And we had two other keynotes. Stephen Price, who had just published his first book on the screenplay, which is one of the first publications on the theory of screenwriting. And Marida Di Crosta, who came from Lyon, France, but she's Italian. And she just published a book in French on writing for interactive film, which at that moment was quite new. And she experimented with interactive film also for broadcasters like Arte. We had some, I had to look that up, but we had some 50 presenters, some 120 delegates in all. Nowadays that seems small, and one of the things that many people, and also a number of colleagues of mine who attended the conference, remarked was that the atmosphere at the conference was so nice and convivial, and there were so vivid discussions going on during coffee and lunch breaks. So it was like what already has been mentioned, it was more or less a very small group of friends, almost family, at that time. What can I add again? Yeah, I think one general feeling that was present at the conference, and I noticed that in Chris Pallen's report, that he remarked that as well, that there was this feeling that this was really growing, this research network, and there was the idea, I think, that it's really taking off now, and it will become big if the Brussels conference is a success, and it was a success. So when we moved to Sydney the next year, well, it really started booming, as we all know. So these are some thoughts, things that I remembered from the organizing the Brussels conference. Maybe one last very personal note. I already was quite sick at the moment that I organized the conference. And when I really fell out, one of the nice things was that I received so many wishes, get better soon, from all over the world. And that's also proof that we are more than just colleagues. That was a very nice experience as well. Well, it soothed a bit my health problems at that time. It had also quite some consequences on the rest, but especially in Belgium, the ideas on what screenwriting research could be, that it could be important to have archives, for instance, but maybe we can just discuss that later on. So that's my report of what I remember from 10 years ago now. Carmen, what do we do now?
How nice.
I got a question to everybody, actually. I just wondered what people thought, given that we are now in a hiatus, thanks to the COVID-19. What do you think we should do now? This is for Paolo, really, to let him know what we think should happen. My own view is that I think we should just go ahead and do whatever is necessary. If we can meet, we should meet. If we can't meet, we should meet like this, because we're getting used to Zooming, even if we don't like it particularly. And yet I'm getting withdrawal symptoms. Admittedly, I didn't go to Porto. So you have a more recent memory than me, probably. But I'm getting withdrawal symptoms here. I need to have this injection of screenwriting researcher people. Not just because you said nice things about me, but thank you for that. But really because you've reminded me just how many directions this can go in, and the kind of critical mass that Chris Pallen was talking about is still going. I just wonder what your thoughts are on it.
I think online is better than no conference at all, that's for sure. And I really like listening to people present. And Ronald, when you talked about Brussels, I was taken back to Stephen Price's presentation. I really like Stephen, and he does wonderful work. But I think he was presenting in a Word document where he was scrolling, and it was very disturbing instead of using PowerPoints and stuff. And it's just every time I read stuff by Stephen, I think, yeah, but he's probably written this on a typewriter, or, it's just a different sense. So when you hear Catherine reading her wonderful papers and the way that Catherine speaks, when I read her book, I can almost hear the way that Catherine would tell me the story of her book and make an argument. And it has so much value, that thing of having the impression of the person who has thought this and put this down on paper and is trying to have a dialogue with you as a reader. So I think that's also a great value of the conference, besides the dinners and the friendships and everything else that comes with meeting in person. It's that sense of also meeting the person behind the text and the person who is making this argument. But I mean, if we can meet, I think we should do it online. So at least there's the sense of listening to what people are working on and where things are moving currently.
Yes, and I agree. We discussed that years ago already, because people were proposing I could present online. I'm not able to come over, and we always refused that. But I think we got used to this type of communication. Maybe we should meet even if it's online. And I think now that we're used to that kind of communication, that this also opens up possibilities for people who cannot afford to travel. And that's a problem that we have had since the beginning. People from India, for instance, wanting to come over and were not able to. So maybe that would help.
Yeah.
By the way, I have Anup Yadav is my friend in Facebook, and she has recently published a novel.
Ah.
Yeah. I don't go to Facebook very often, but I went the other night and realized that she's now a novelist.
I remember her from Helsinki when
Yeah.
she came and she funded herself to get there.
Yes.
Maybe she got some support from somewhere, but I was really impressed at the determination of some people to get there, and the impossibility in some countries of raising sufficient cash to get to something as expensive as one of these conferences. I'm afraid I think we kind of rather we didn't exactly ignore the problem, but we as Eva has said, it is not the same thing to do these online, but we should, for the sake of those people who can't do it any other way. So maybe we can do a mixed method.
Yeah, maybe you can have a pre-conference that's online with people who cannot attend the regular conference. So it can be a mix of things. The Society of Cinema and Media Studies conference was supposed to be on now, and it's moved online. And they've designed quite an amazing platform that seems to work very well in terms of going in and out of the different panels. But that's a major setup. That's not something you sort of design overnight. But the conference starts tomorrow, and it looks quite impressive. So the whole online conference setup is also definitely improving at the moment because we can't go anywhere. So
yeah, I don't think we could have done it 5 years ago. The technology was too weak.
Yeah.
And even now it kind of falls apart, especially if you're using Teams. But actually, Zoom is okay. It works, generally speaking, unless this is completely going out and nothing's happening to it. I don't know.
Okay.
However,
in that sense, there are two other themes that we have to discuss, and maybe we can do it. We can receive your opinions. One is the thing of the theme of the language. In that sense, are we going to use always the English, or are we going to be multilingual? But in that sense, we divide at the same time. I personally think that if we do it always in English, it's not a problem, because we, the stranger, the ones who are not English speakers, we need to speak English. I mean, it's a must now. And the second one is the theme of the timetable, or the time location, you know, the differences of time, and time zones. Thank you, Rose. She's in the back. So maybe you could share with us your thoughts about this.
I think on the language question, it should be a matter of surveying all the non-English speakers and leave the English speakers out, the native English speakers, I mean. So it's people who speak other languages, you know, it's got to be your shout, not those of us whose first language is English.
I remember the conference in Brussels and the experiment with French, and I speak French, and it was really interesting because you then try to have the keynote present in French, and then the slides would be in English. So that was trying to do the combination. So you would listen to the beautiful French language, and you could still kind of follow, if you weren't French speaking, what was going on the slides. But of course, that's a very complicated way of presenting. And I would definitely recommend pursuing English as the general working language, because we all, by now, I would say, speak English fairly well across the globe. In terms of time zones, that's mostly an online issue, I guess. The Society of Cinema and Media Studies conference is in the States with a 7-hour time difference. So this is going to be an interesting end of the week where I'll be online very late in the evening and presenting on a Saturday late afternoon. And but I mean, that's the way it is in the online format. I remember we've always had problems finding the right time of year for the conference in terms of different academic years, calendars. So September, for instance, the term has started in Denmark, so it's not really a good time to go to a conference in the first or second week of the term. But that works very well for UK scholars, and somehow the tradition was established that this was the best time of the year. But it will always be like that it's hard to accommodate everyone, both in terms of places and time zones.
We don't have time. I mean, we are almost at the end of our session. I just want you to, well, thank you very much, the four of you, for sharing your memories and all your experience about organizing the first conference of the SRN. And I want to give you just one or two words or sentences about the future. What do you want to see? What is your dream about the Screenwriting Network?
I'll kick off, because I think it's got to be about diversity. We've got to have to try and reach people who are not reaching the network, and what that means is getting somebody to look at those areas which are not mainstream Hollywood, international stuff. We want to find out more about the history of smaller nations and their involvement in screenwriting, and different cultures and how people differ in the way they tell stories on screen. It's going to be really important that we do that before a lot of those traditions fall away.
I think it's also, I mean, the community around the Screenwriting Research Network is an excellent framework for doing larger joint collaborative research projects. And I really think there's a lot of potential there. And I've been talking with some of you over the years about this, but somehow we haven't made it happen yet. But I think there's so many interesting things in comparing the ways things are done, screenwriting as creative labor across different countries, and what is happening there. And then, of course, a lot of changes related to technology and digitalization in terms of, for instance, screenwriting for VR and stuff that some of you are working with. So.
Well, I can second to that, because my current employment is at the University of the Arts, where we have music, fine arts and theater. And And a screenwriting program in Aalto made a collaborative course with not composers, but those who direct the orchestra. What is the
Conductors.
conductors? They made a joint course so that the conductors and the musicians made the according to the screenplay rules. They used them in music and vice versa. And that was one. I've been thinking about this inter or multi or transdisciplinary aspects quite a lot recently because of the certain emphasis in certain European funding programs on this. So, and that's why I really second to that open up to other fields as well would be welcoming.
Klaus Tieber has just written an article on music and screenwriting. I won't tell you anymore, but you'll find it if you look him up.
Who was I? Sorry.
Klaus Tieber.
Oh, really? By the way, I posted the image to the chat, the journal launch image. If you click the chat, I don't know if it opens, but that's my first time I posted a file to chat, but it's there. Okay, moving over to Ronald.
About no, I think I agree with what has been said. Diversity is, I think, very important. Diversity on all, in every direction, not just culturally or geographically, but also women screenwriters. That's also something that's important to discuss and research historically, but also historically also to support what is happening today, and linking the past with what is happening today. I think that's also something that we should do. Collaborative research projects. Yes, we tried that once. I remember. That's hard, of course, but maybe we should do it again.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan, Eva, Ronald, and Kirsi. Thank you very much for being here, for sharing these precious memories.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you to Raphael and Paolo and Rose and everybody. It's really been great to see you guys again. Let's make it not too distant future.
Yes, yes.
Would be nice.
Let's hope that we can see us near soon.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.